This is me. My name's Dakota. I just figured I mod enough consoles that I should start recording them just in case I could help someone else along the way. Today we're going to be modding a 4 gigabyte Corona Xbox 360. A couple things you're going to need is a postfix adapter and a 1K ohm resistor. And I recommend having something like thin and pointy like this. It's a pair of tweezers I straightened out. That's so we can scrape off the solder mask off the PLL point on the motherboard as it's covered up with solder mask. You're going to need your basic soldering equipment um, and your Raspberry Pi Pico flashed with the PicoFlasher firmware with the 7 wires on the right side soldered to lead so you can connect to the motherboard. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to go through step by step how to do all of this with screen captures and all that. Um, I hope you enjoy. So now we're at this point in the build. You can tell this is a Corona motherboard because if you look right here, there's this set of vias and this set of vias right there. The fact that they aren't parallel shows that this is a Corona motherboard. If it were a Trinity, they'd be both going down, up and down. So now we're going to hook up our PicoFlasher to this and then test the motherboard again just to make sure we didn't mess anything up because that's always good practice. All right, so after taking this apart, I've noticed that that postfix adapter I initially said you needed, I will not need for this version of the Corona motherboard, as if you look at this part of the board right here, I'm not sure how well you can see that, but it'll be in the guide that I put in the link in the description. Um, I do have the traces present on my motherboard, which means that no postfix adapter is needed. So you won't be doing that. Alright, I will also say that this is a hiccup I ran into, but I'm going to leave it in the video just to show you the kind of how it goes sometimes. Um, these 7 wires, none of them are used for reading and writing to the 4 gigabyte NAND. So I'm going to have to add additional headers to this to actually connect to that. If you have a 16 megabyte NAND, this is still perfectly fine. This one has a 4 gigabyte NAND, so I'm going to have to do that. I'll kind of include the speed up process of me adding wires to it, but it'll also be in the guide that I link in the description. I will probably put out additional videos showing Trinity, and if I come across a 16 megabyte Corona, the same thing with that. But yeah, we're going to keep going with this, and I'll see you in a few. Alright, we just soldered that in. I'm not a good solderer, so I did what I could. I'll kind of move the camera here and show you. We just got these leads temporarily soldered on. I don't know if it'll focus. Just connected to the Pico like that. We're going to be very careful and not try to move that around relative to each other for the simple fact that it's done kind of like shit. So let me go find a micro USB cable and plug this into my computer, and I'll switch over to seeing what's on that screen. Okay, so I realize now I got ahead of myself. I had my computer on, I was reading my NAND and everything. I forgot to put on my actual mod wires on the back. Uh, Probably got a little ahead of myself because I'm making a video and all that for the first time. But I'm going to do that right now. Because we have these wires on here, I'd recommend having something to lift the motherboard up. Otherwise, we could damage our solder points. I personally have these little 3D printed PCB holders that I made. So I'm going to do that right now. Okay, so that's my wires soldered in. I have a 1K ohm resistor right in the middle of that wire there. Um, yeah, now we can flip this back over and actually do our NAND stuff on the computer. Okay, so now we are over at the computer. As you can see, I have JRunner open right here. You can see right here, it shows that our PicoFlasher is currently connected. I have my Pico wired up. I have my Xbox on standby mode. Make sure it's not on. And we're just going to read our, if I click this question mark here, we should see we have a Corona 4 gigabyte showing up down here, meaning that we have wired everything up correctly. So now we're just going to read our NAND. I have it set to 3 just in case. The third one is what I use to save as my backup for the retail NAND. So we are going to run this now. I already ran this once because I got ahead of myself before and started reading the NAND before I wired up the actual glitch files for the RGH3. So I'm going to restart everything. Okay. So now that our NANDs have finished reading, we're going to create a Xell image and going to use RGH3 over here. Make sure you check mark that. Um, these are going to be optional. I'm going to put no HDMI wait because I don't want to have to plug in HDMI every time I want to see if the console boots up. So I'm going to check mark that. And I think that's it for right now. So I'm going to create Xell and write it to the console now. All right, our Xell has now been written. So I'm going to go to my capture card, plug in my Xbox, make sure I put my heatsink on there because it's going to get hot quickly. We're going to turn it on and just wait for the CPU key, which I'm going to then write into this square right here. I do it manually because I'm kind of a scrub and don't want to hook it up to the Wi-Fi and all of that. So we're going to do that right now. Okay, so we are currently on my capture card. Make sure you unplug your PicoFlasher. I put my heatsink back on, just loosely on top to make sure it doesn't overheat. And I plugged in my front panel PCB and power button and all that. So now we're going to turn it on. And as it's turning on, you should see the Xell launcher pop up. And there we go. There's Xell reloaded. We're going to let this run for a little bit and wait till it shows our CPU key. And then we're just going to write that in. I like to take my phone and take a picture of it, just in case. There's all of our fuses. And now we're going to take a picture of our CPU key. The DVD key will be entered automatically, so we don't have to worry about that. So now we're going to turn the console off and go back to my main monitor. So now that we're back here, I have the picture of my CPU key on my phone. I'm just going to manually write it in. If you type it in wrong, don't worry. It'll tell you that it's wrong and you can get a chance to fix it. So I'm going to fast forward through this because it's going to take me a second. All right, and there you can see that I successfully entered the CPU key correctly. I don't need to worry about the DVD key, it'll get that automatically. So now we are going to plug our Pico back in with the console off. Let me make sure the Pico's connected. Yep, Pico's connected. So now we're going to create our Z build image using our CPU key. There it goes. You see right here, it got the DVD key automatically. We don't have to worry about that. And now we will just write our NAND. And this should upload our new NAND file, which should allow for homebrew files like Aurora and to be able to play your backup games, which I will go through step by step to show you how to install all of that as well. I'll put a brand new hard drive in there. Okay, our write is now finished. So what that means is I am going to go over to the Xbox and I'm going to test it. And if it successfully works, I am going to put it all back together and show you how to install Aurora and all those files from a fresh hard drive. Alright, there we go. A fully modded Corona 4GB RGH3 modded Xbox. So, now I'm going to throw in a blank hard drive into this. We'll go over to the capture card, and we're going to go through step by step how to install Aurora on it. And yeah. So, we are now over at our computer. I've downloaded my Aurora, Dashlaunch, and XEX menu files already, but I'll link them in the description. So we have our flash drive here. I already plugged it into my Xbox to make sure it would recognize and can go through the files on it. So that's not an issue. But I'd recommend you do that before you do this because sometimes the Xbox needs to reformat the drive. So to continue on, we have our Aurora, our Dashlaunch, and our XEX menu. We're going to start by creating an Aurora folder here. And then we're just going to copy everything inside here to that Aurora folder. Now that we have done that, we are going to open up our Dashlaunch here. We're going to copy Xell launch and installer here. Copy them over. And once those are done, we're going to go to installer and rename it Dashlaunch. Now for XEX menu, we're going to create a folder called content with a capital C. Inside of there, we're going to create a folder with 16 zeros. So we have 0. So now we have 4 there. This is how I like to do it. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 16 zeros. We're going to go into our XEX menu folder. Go to xexlive.rar. Copy this code 9999 right into there. And that should be everything all set up on our flash drive. So now we're going to go over to our Xbox here, and I'll see you over there. Okay, so we are now over at the Xbox. I'm going to turn it on right now. I'll wait for it to turn on. There we go. And it's going to look like a normal dashboard for right now. But we are going to change that. So we're going to go over to our settings here. Storage. And our flash drive is right here, down here. Sorry, our flash drive is as big as our hard drive because I'm using just a small 20 gig hard drive for demonstration purposes. So we're going to open this up, and you can see we have demos. We have an item here. We have XEX menu. I'm going to have to create a profile first because, like I said, this is a fresh hard drive. So let me just create a player 1 profile to the hard drive. Alright, we have that now, and we need a profile in order to transfer files. So I'm just going to copy this over to our hard drive. So we're going to exit there, go over to our games. There should be 3 of them here now because I decided to transfer it twice. But in all reality, it doesn't matter which one you choose. So we're just going to choose this one. So we are now in Games Discovery, which is not correct. We're going to press right bumper, and we're now on our USB. And we're going to start by pressing square on, not square, pressing triangle on Aurora. We're going to copy that. Press right bumper, or no, we're going to press left on the D-pad and go over to HDD1. And I like to go to content, not content, I like to create a folder, call it apps. And this is where I like to install Dashlaunch and everything. So we're going to go in there and paste. All right, we have Aurora in there now. So now we have to go back to the USB. We're going to go to Dashlaunch. Copy this as well. Put this in apps. And we're going to grab Xell launch. Copy that. And also put that in apps. So now we are actually going to launch Dashlaunch. And Dashlaunch is where we can actually set our default program that opens after the console boots up. So we're going to do that here by going to Paths and setting our default to HDD, Apps, Aurora, then Aurora.xex right here. So I also like to make it so if you hold down the A button, it'll boot into the regular stock dash. So we're going to do that here by making it so if you turn the console on and hold A, it'll just boot into the regular dashboard. So I'm also going to go into behavior, and I like to turn off the X live patch. I probably went to the wrong spot. I probably meant to go into network. Live blocks enabled, live strong. So that's all good. I'm going to go through here and make sure there's nothing else I'm forgetting about. Auto swap, I like to make sure this is enabled for multi-game discs. Alright, that all looks good. So now we're going to press right bumper, put on the HDD and press X here. That will save our configurations to our hard drive. So now if you press the middle button and go to Xbox Home, that should launch us into Aurora. And there we go. We have now successfully installed Aurora and modded an Xbox Corona 4 GB, start to finish. If you want to learn how to install files to this hard drive using an external drive, I can go through that process in another video. I also plan on making videos for modding other types of hard drives, including Xbox Fats, Xbox Trinities, doing ring light mods, things like that. So I'm also planning on doing other consoles as I get my hands on them, because that's what I enjoy doing. So if you found this beneficial, let me know. Until then, see you next time. Have a good one.